Welcome to a special episode of the Irresistible You podcast. This is a very deeply personal episode. And today I want to talk about representation, visibility, and owning your story and seeing yourself in others. This is especially important with body image and weight challenges when we're able to see ourselves represented somewhere in the media, in a book, on TV, someone out there that we look at them and go, oh, yeah, me too. I look just like that, or I relate to that person. I know as a geriatric millennial who was born in 1981, who, grew up in the 90s, became a teenager and a young adult in the 90s, I never saw my body represented. I never saw anybody in the media. And I believe that for those of us that grew up without that representation anywhere, and anything that you turned on was, you're too fat, go on a diet. Like, if you go back and look at even the sitcoms that we were watching and brainwashed to believe that DJ Tanner was fat and Topanga was fat and Rose from Titanic was fat, when none of those girls and women were fat. But when you compare it to the heroin chic trend that was going on the runways and the magazines, of course they looked bigger. They were just normal, average sized women. It really made a difference in how I perceived myself, how I grew up, the voices I heard in my head about what I look like. And I think sometimes if I was born in, the 2000, the 2010s or something, or even the early 2000s, how would that be different? How is that different now for girls that have social media? While social media can be toxic, certainly, it also can be refreshing because we can see ourselves in these other people. And I want to bring this full circle today and share with you some exciting news because, as you know, or maybe those of you who are new, you don't know, my daughter, Catalina, who is now 8 years old, she lives with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder where your body's pancreas stops producing insulin, and the human body cannot survive without the production of insulin. So she has to wear an insulin pump and has to take insulin anytime she eats, has to take insulin throughout the day to keep her blood sugars in range, has to constantly monitor her blood sugar. And so she wears two medical devices. She wears an insulin pump on her leg, and she wears a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor, on her arm. So at a very young age, she has had to wear these medical devices, and other kids don't have to wear those. So it makes her feel different. And she just published a book, which is now available on Amazon. And it is a story that came from her heart that she wanted to write as a way to share her type 1 diabetes diagnosis. I could not be more proud of her, and I'm going to try really hard to get through this episode and not be a blubbering mess because of just how proud I am, not just of this book, but how far she has come in her diagnosis and how she handles and manages things that, quite frankly, even an adult would not be able to handle at times, because it is a very heavy, constant 24 hours a day condition. And so she was diagnosed when she was 4 years old. She's now 8. So when the book was published, we actually had it published on her, they call it a diaversary. And diaversary is exactly what it sounds like. It is the anniversary of when you were diagnosed with diabetes. So we are now going on 4 years, which is so insane to me. It doesn't feel like it's been 4 years, but then it's also felt like it's been a lifetime, if you know what I mean. And when she was first diagnosed, the days were dark. I know that there's an episode on here where I finally share my story because I went completely rogue and ghost on social media because I did not have the capacity to talk to anyone. I didn't have the capacity to look at people's shit on social media. It was so hard. And I was just literally surviving through the days trying to figure this thing out, because type 1 diabetes And please do not confuse it with type 2 diabetes. They are two very different conditions. They are managed completely differently. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I will, for the rest of my life, educate and make sure that people understand what type 1 is. But type 1 diabetes is not a condition where you are given a vial of insulin, you are told to go about your day, take your insulin when you eat, and everything will be okay. It is a literal 24 hours a day. It doesn't take any breaks. It is a constant roller coaster. There are so many factors that will take your blood sugars up and down. And just because you're taking insulin does not mean you're in range. It does not mean you stay in range. It is a constant just thing that you have to be aware of. You cannot ignore it. You cannot take a break from it. Because the thing about type 1 is if you go too high, you can become very ill and you can go into diabetic ketoacidosis, which is a life-threatening disorder. If you go too low, you can have hypoglycemia, which is also a life-threatening disorder, which can happen very quickly. You can be in range, and within 30 minutes to an hour, you can drop so rapidly that you are, comatose or having a seizure or unconscious. And it's a very scary disorder. And when you are first thrown into it, and I know when you're hearing this for the first time, it sounds very scary, and it is. But I'm 4 years into this, and I know how to manage it. I know how to deal with things. We've got this down now, although there's always a loop that it throws me for every so often, of course. But when we were first thrown into this, no one asks to get these diseases. And we have this little 4-year-old, and we had a newborn at the time. Javi was 7 months old. 8 months old. We were thrown into this thing where you're grieving because you've just been told your child has this lifelong, chronic, life-threatening condition. You don't know how to do it yet because you literally have to inject your child multiple times a day with insulin shots, because when you first are diagnosed, you're not on a pump. You are having to prick your child's fingers at least 10 times a day, and trying to get a 4-year-old who has a phobia of needles to do 10 to 15 needles in her body a day. I can't even put it into words how hard it was. And those first few weeks, you're literally in survival mode. You have so many different emotions and feelings. And not only do you as a parent, so does your child. Your child, who is 4 years old, has no idea what is going on. They don't understand it. You're trying to make it sound like everything's going to be okay because you don't want to negatively talk about this thing, because that's going to set your kid up for the rest of their lives to be resentful and bitter and angry, and that is not what we wanted. So we're trying to, not wear rose-colored glasses and act like everything is fine, but, to raise her up in a way that she's going to embrace this and eventually be able to see that she can get through anything, right? So when she was first diagnosed, she's this little teeny tiny 4-year-old. And when I look back on the videos and the pictures, it takes my breath away how tiny she was, because when you are undiagnosed with type 1, your body essentially is attacking itself and eating itself. And she was losing weight. And that's how the doctors it was a red flag that she, let's even test her glucose for this, right? You can go to my diagnosis episode and you can hear all about that. But I look back at how frail and vulnerable and fragile she was, and her having to just take this thing on, right? Like, yes, it's hard as the parent because you have to inflict pain on your child to give them these injections and these shots. But at the end of the day, we're not the ones that have to endure it, right? And she, in her little teeny tiny voice and her little teeny tiny body, she would say, "Mommy, Daddy, why did this happen to me?" And you can hear 4 years later, that still just cuts me like a knife, because I can't answer it. To this day, I can't answer that for her. I don't know why this happened. It just did, and it sucks. And the first time you hear that, it just slices you open. And the one thing I would say to her, and I say this to this day, is I said, I don't know why this happened to you, but it is one big sour lemon that you got handed. And I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And you're allowed to feel upset about it, but I want you at some point to understand that you have to take this sour lemon and I need you to make lemonade out of it. And she would be like, what do you mean? What does that mean? And I said, you can't change the fact that this happened to you, but you can change the way that you handle it and the way that you deal with it. And the way that you can turn it into lemonade is you have to use your pain and your story to help other people. And she's like, well, how can I do that? And so we would talk about different things. And she knows that I have a podcast. And she's like, she said, like the way you help people on your podcast. And I said, yeah, I guess you're right. She's like, you help women love themselves no matter what they look like. And you know, that also, on a side note, sometimes you don't feel like you're doing things the way you're supposed to, or you don't feel success, or you don't, you doubt yourself and all those things. And then when you hear your child see you through the lens that you sometimes can't see yourself through, it is so like full circle and like, okay, I guess I am doing something right in the world. And so I said, yeah, like the podcast. And she came up with this idea that she wanted to write a book. And my daughter loves mermaids. She has always loved mermaids. Her nursery was a mermaid theme. Her, almost 9-year-old self room, we turned it into a mermaid grotto. I have a reel and a TikTok where I showed you we've been decorating, and I want to come live in your room. It's so cool. So she's always been obsessed with mermaids. She swims like a mermaid. She's an excellent swimmer. We live by the beach. So mermaid is just, it's embedded in our culture, our lifestyle, everything about, where we live and just the things that she loves. And she said that she wanted to write about a mermaid who got type 1 diabetes. So I thought, that is amazing. Like, yes. So she started coming up with this story. And she came up with this mermaid, and her name is Rosie Sparklefin. And Rosie Sparklefin is a mermaid who gets diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And the way that she's diagnosed is a very creative, kid-friendly, non-scary thing. Like it's such a creative way for her to share her diagnosis story. So of course I was on board. I'm like, I already have a journal on Amazon. I know how to get it on Amazon. I know how to do all the things. Like, let's do it. And so this is a project, a labor of love that her and I have been working on. And I am happy to say that it is now available on Amazon. It is called Rosie Sparklefin, the mermaid who found her sparkle with type 1 diabetes. You can search for that on Amazon. I also have linked it down in the show notes if you would like to take a look at it. I would be forever grateful if you want to purchase a copy. And this story is so important because it gave my daughter, first things, it gave my daughter a creative outlet to share her diagnosis and her story and channel her sour lemon, her pain, into something, into the world. And as a creative person who, makes a living from creativity, which I think a lot of us do if you really think about what you do. But I mean, I create content, I write content, I create training programs, I create something from nothing every single day. And the creative process can be so painful because it's hard. It's sometimes like walking through mud. And when you come out on the other side of it, it's just so beautiful to see this thing that was just placed into your brain come to life and have a face and have a visual. It's amazing. It's an amazing process. Number one, having her come up with this on her own and channel this idea, I think has been really therapeutic, but also how therapeutic for other children. So other kids, a couple things here. One, other kids who have just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and they're asking themselves why. They're asking their parents why. Their parents are putting their child to bed and going into the other room at night and just sobbing and asking God also, why did this happen to my child? I cannot tell you how powerful storytelling is. When we were in the hospital, we were given, you're given like this backpack, and you're given all these goodies from like different organizations. JDRF, which is now called Breakthrough T1D. They are a nonprofit, the biggest nonprofit really that for diabetes, type 1 diabetes research and such. And they give you all of these different resources and tools. And, you know, of course, we're in a children's hospital, so they're giving her, we came home with so many toys. And in that backpack, there were books. There was this one, and I'm so sad they discontinued it, but there was a book from Disney. They have a character named Coco who is a monkey, and she plays with Mickey and, you know, the Donald and all of them, and she gets diagnosed with type 1. So it came with that book, and then it had a workbook. I cannot tell you how many times we read those books. And they even had a stuffed Coco that they gave us, and she came with a little insulin pen and all these little supplies and things like that. And I cannot tell you with a small child how many times we used the character, we read the book, we did the workbook, we went online and found things. Having that be available to relate back to your child is priceless. It was priceless. It was amazing. It really, truly helped in those early dark days. And in those books, she gets to see herself, right? She gets to see herself. And I think, you know, as time went on, and at this time she was in preschool a couple days a week. And a couple months after diagnosis, she was in pre-K full-time 5 days a week. So her entire school career, minus a couple of months, as far back as she can remember, honestly, she will always have had diabetes. I don't think she will eventually remember school before diabetes. So, of course, you're going into school, and now you stand out, because by the time she got to school in the fall, we had a CGM on her arm that monitors her blood sugar 24 hours a day. And a month into school starting, we had an insulin pump on her leg. That's where she gets her insulin. She has to change it every 3 days versus having to take, 5 to 10 shots a day, and also the freedom and the peace of mind that it gives. So going into school, being around kids who have never seen someone with diabetes and wearing these, medical devices, of course, kids are always asking her, hey, what's that on your arm? Hey, what's that on your leg? To this day, she's 8 years old. So it happens at cheerleading, at dance, school, even at the playground with random kids. And being able to have these books and these characters and these stories, like, I cannot tell you, I told you guys it's going to be hard. I cannot tell you the way her eyes will light up when, especially we call it seeing a diabetic in the wild. We see a diabetic in the wild, right? With a CGM, or when we went to Disney World, we go to Disney at least once a year. And when we go to Disney and the cast members who are also diabetic, and they're like, hey, check us out, twin. And they'll like show her their CGM or their insulin pump. It means the world. It means the world to my child, and it means the world to me as a parent to have her see other people in real life, in cartoon life, that look like her. And going to the conference every year has been life-changing. Go to a diabetic conference that's just been amazing. And she has a diabestie now, and they stay in touch with each other. And, having a friend that you don't have to explain why your mom's telling you to drink a juice, right? And the friends that she does have that aren't diabetic are so kind and compassionate and caring. And they'll say, if she's running low, she can't keep playing on the playground. And, having her friends that have said to her, I'll sit with you while you drink your juice, just priceless. So having yourself represented is amazing, right? But then the other side of that is for other kids who are not diabetic to be exposed, right? Most kids, have seen people in a wheelchair or crutches, or, maybe they're missing a limb or something like that. Like, people have seen that for the most part, represented, and not as much as it should, but I mean, I think we see that more often. And having other kids who aren't used to diabetes see a character with an insulin pump or a CGM or taking a shot, right? To see that also brings awareness and education to that child and that parent for them to be able to talk about it. So that, yes, she's always going to get questions, but maybe there'll be a little bit more compassion and a little more empathy and a little bit more understanding when there's an education and awareness around what this is. And I know she's still very young, and I, of course, as a mom, and Frank as well, like, we have our thoughts and our anxieties about what will come for her as kids get older. And, kids get really mean in middle school and high school. And we're continuing to just empower her and build her up as she's young. And we'll always do that. But this book has so much meaning because, number one, like I said, it's her story told in a creative outlet. And it's helped her, process, because to this day, she still talks about the hospital and what it was like. And, I can't imagine like how that's going to affect her and how she's processing that. Because I still have times where I feel like I'm processing through it. But also it's putting a creative mark, stamp into the world of I matter, I'm here, I exist. Yes, I have type 1 diabetes, but that's never going to slow me down. It's not going to stop me. I can be whatever the hell I want to be, regardless of what I'm diagnosed with, regardless of the challenges that I've been given. And it also allows other kids and parents to maybe understand a little bit more about what this is, and even just bringing awareness to it, that this is even a thing that's out there. So if they run into a child that has a pump on or a CGM or is giving themselves a shot, it's not so shocking. So I am so proud of her. She wants to turn it into a series. She wants to have other stories, and I am here for it. Like, I am here for it 100,000%. So if you would like your own copy, again, you can head over to Amazon. I'm going to link that down in the show notes as well. And I'll say this, I have some amazing friends and family and supporters and listeners that have bought copies of this book who do not have young children. I love y'all. I love you so much. Like, they don't have young kids, but they are gifting it to children in their life. They are also gifting it to their local libraries, which is amazing. And we're going to be doing that here as well locally, is, donating it to the library as well. And I'm also going to be researching how we can maybe, talk with some of the diabetic nonprofits to get this in the diagnosis kits, or just bring awareness to it. This is not a money-making project for us. This is a passion project, 100,000%. It is about inclusivity, awareness, diversity. Like, it is all of those things. And I think especially in a world right now where diversity, equity, and inclusion are being demonized, it matters. It matters. It matters. It matters. I cannot stress enough how much it matters and how much it's life-changing to see yourself in a book, to see yourself in a story, in a video, in a movie, in a show, in a magazine. We cannot erase people. We cannot erase the fact that people live with disabilities, the fact that people live with different skin tones and skin colors. We cannot, and I will always take a stand, and I will not erase that. And I will plaster the walls of this with this book if that's what it takes. Like, this book will not be erased. My daughter will not be erased. You will not be erased. And that's not going to happen. We're not going to allow that to happen. And when we live in a world where now books about having freckles have been destroyed and removed from libraries, now is the time. Now is the time to put your piece of work out into the universe and out into the world. And I am so proud of my daughter, and I cannot wait to see where this goes and what the future holds for her and all the things that she's going to be able to accomplish. And I will always drive into her that, yes, you were dealt this, but you cannot allow this to be an excuse to hold you back, to make you smaller, and to stop you from what you really want to do. And I'm constantly having these conversations with her on an ongoing basis. Like, we were at the store the other day, and I always have my bag with me that has all the low treats, has all the diabetic supplies, like even just to run into the store. And for whatever reason, I didn't bring it. I didn't even have it in the car, which I had like this panic moment because we're like 5 minutes from home. But anyway, we're in the checkout line and her alarm goes off because she's like 70 and the arrow is going down. Anything below 80 is considered a low blood sugar. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I grab some, I don't even remember what it was. It was like Skittles or Starburst or something from the little stand right there by the cashier. And of course, it's the day that the person in front of us has like 800 items. They're asking about coupons and all this shit. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I grab the Starburst and I rip it open and I start giving her a couple pieces of candy. She's like, Mom, you can't do that. That's shoplifting. I'm like, honey, it's not shoplifting because I'm going to pay for it. I'm already in line. I'm going to pay for it. And I had this conversation with her when we got to the car to say, listen, one day I'm not going to be here. You're going to be an adult living your life and you're going to have a low blood sugar. I said, you cannot worry about what other people think about you because you have to put yourself first and do what you have to do. And I said, and God forbid one person in that line would have said something to me, they would have wished they never said anything to me. Like, so I'm constantly, and she'll say to me when we go places and it says no food. Mom, you can't. I said, no. Legally, you are allowed to bring food into this venue because you have a disability and you are, we try not to use the word disability, but, when it comes to the law, it's considered a disability and she has every right to have juice and candy in her bag if she needs it, because if she has a low blood sugar, it is a life-threatening condition and that is the only way to bring up a low blood sugar. Anyway, I digress. The point being is I'm constantly giving her these nuggets and telling her, like, you cannot allow anybody to make you feel less than. You cannot do that. And you cannot be ashamed of having diabetes. Don't be ashamed of wearing your devices. Like, rock that shit. Love yourself. And I think that falls so deeply connected into what we do here on the podcast, which, this whole podcast is about finding the irresistible in you and in your life. And no matter where you are on the scale in your personal weight loss journey or what you look like. And it just has such a deeper meaning for me now because of Catalina's story and what she has to endure. And I will always be an advocate for women. I will always be an advocate for loving yourself, embracing yourself, and feeling seen and included, because I personally understand what that does to someone when you are not seen and included in materials. And it has been awesome. Like, I feel like we're making headway in the world a little bit here and there. Like, there's been some Disney movies where there's been characters that have an insulin pump on or a CGM, and that just means the world when we see that. And I cannot explain to you. Like, there's a video going viral right now in the diabetic community. I don't watch the show. I don't know anything about the show, but that reality show on Netflix called, I think it's Love Island or something like that. One of the girls is type 1, and people are like, that clip has just been going around and around and around where the guy that she's talking to is like, oh, you have a Dexcom? And it's just so cool to see that. So I know this is not the normal content that I usually share here. So if you're still listening, thank you. I appreciate you. And yeah, that's all. I'm so proud of my little girl, and I wanted to share what she has out there. And if you would like a copy, please, by all means, feel free. We would be forever grateful to that. And if you do have a copy, if you even can take it a step further and leave a review over on Amazon, that would be incredibly helpful as well. If you have anyone in your life who's type 1, please share this with them. Let them know. And on that note, I am going to go wrap this episode up and get back to my day. I hope you have an amazing day. Until next time, stay irresistible. Bye, guys.